know. It's further ahead in this agenda. These things are not random.
What are they trying to do with the transgender?
Well, as part of, and this will sound fantastic, except that if you do the research.
We just talked about lizard shapeshifters. This won't sound fantastic.
They're already doing what I'm about to say. This spider, and we can come to shapeshifting too and how that works as if we get into the nature of reality itself. But this spider has an agenda for the world. And I've got a chapter in the new book called The Assimilation. And it is to assimilate the human mind, human consciousness, so that their mind becomes the human mind. Because, people keep talking about artificial intelligence. They say, oh, artificial intelligence is taking over this, artificial intelligence is running that. What I don't hear is, okay, what is artificial intelligence? What is it? Because I quote some people in the book, I could have quoted many more, scientists working with artificial intelligence who don't understand it, and I openly admit they don't understand it. They don't understand how the speed in which it's progressing. There was a story this week about artificial intelligence creating artificial intelligence technology that was better than human artificial intelligence technology. We are playing with the end of humanity here. What is artificial intelligence? What I say at some length in the book actually is this force of manipulation. Ultimately, that's what's controlling artificial intelligence. So when artificial intelligence, if we allow it, takes over human perception, then what's taking over human perception is this manipulative force. It's been a progression, because I'll say this to you. The control of humanity on the scale and the level that we're seeing depends for its total success on technology. Without technology, without computerization, couldn't have happened. Without this technology that's emerging all the time, pushing it on, it couldn't have happened. Are we really saying that people are sitting round a table, tapping their fingers, waiting for some geek in a garage to invent the next level of technology they need to push this controller on? I had to laugh, A few months ago, the BBC did 2 documentaries on Silicon Valley. They were all right. They actually questioned it a bit, funnily enough, but not enough, but a bit. But there was this sequence of garage doors. And as the sequence went through, the voiceover was saying, behind this garage door, this technology was created. Behind this garage door, this was created. Behind this garage door, this was created. And I could imagine, the manipulator sitting around a table saying, too many garage doors, guys. Too many garage. They're gonna suss it in a minute. Too many garage doors. We need another narrative, another story. And why do I say that? Because what I'm saying is actually this technology that seems to be brand new and coming out of nowhere, just invented. I say that technology existed and was known about by this non-human force, the spider, while humans were knocking rocks together and shooting arrows.
And this is all part of the plan. They're leaking it out to us.
They're leaking it out. Okay. And of course, they need cover stories to get it into the public arena as if it's coming from the public arena. I say it's not. I mean, I've talked to people and read many, many accounts of people who have worked in what they call DUMBs, deep underground military bases, where you need a higher security clearance the lower you go, and they go deep, deep into the earth, who have talked about the fact that if you go deep enough, that's where the interaction takes place between non-human entities and human scientists, which ends up in the public arena as, just discovered a new technology.
Can I ask, why do they want to do this, the manipulators? Why not get rid of us? Why keep us around? Why keep stringing us along? We must have some value to them if that's what they're doing.
Well, yes, we do, and I can sum it up in a scene from The Matrix. When
Is that movie made by them, or was that alternative media, or is it hard to tell?
it's hard to tell.
Because they're throwing us a bone every now and then.
Yeah,
So we can feel like we know what's going on.
Well, yeah, and also, just a quick aside, the world they want to take us into, and we are going into, unless we wake up, is so fantastically different from the world we've known that they have a big problem with that chasm. So I'm not saying this is about the Matrix, possibly, but I'm not saying it for sure, but I am saying it for sure about this stream of movies, year after year after year after year, that are portraying the very dystopian machine-controlled society that they want to take us into. Because it's called preemptive programming. What they're doing is systematically making us subconsciously, consciously too more and more, but subconsciously familiar with that world. So that as it comes in for real, it's less of a chasm, it's less of a shock, because we're being prepared for it. Because it's all a mind game, it's all a perception game. The whole thing is a perception game. So what Morpheus did in the Matrix movie is he held up a battery and he said, basically, the machines have turned human into one of these, which is an energy source. And you remember the scenes in the Matrix of the babies and having their energy trawled? If you look at common themes of ancient cultures and of people I've spoken to on the inside of the system, particularly in America, there is a common theme that these entities feed off human low vibrational energy. Because of a perceptual state is a frequency. If I'm in a state of depression, then I'm in a frequency. Depression is a frequency. Joy is a frequency in our reality. And if you're going to absorb energy as a source of energetic sustenance, then that energy has to be within the frequency band you operate on. And these non-human entities that are manipulating human society, by the very nature of who they are, how they act. I mean, the human word psychopath and psychopathic just encapsulates them. If you look at the so-called hair test of psychopathic traits, including no empathy and at the top, where people have no fail-safe mechanism of behavior because they have no emotional consequence, because they have no empathy, therefore anything goes. Things that we couldn't do because emotionally, empathetically, we couldn't do it to people, they have no problem because they are empathy deleted. So they're in a low frequency state. And therefore, if they're going to use humans as an energetic source, human emotion has to be in a low vibrational state. So they've set up a human society to generate maximum fear, low vibrational state, anxiety, depression, conflict, and all these low vibrational emotional states, fear of the future, regret of the past, resentment, all these low vibrational states, and they feed off them. They feed off them, just like Morpheus was talking about. They've turned humans into one of these. So we are an energy source to them. And the idea is to get humans controlled by artificial intelligence so that they completely control our perceptual state.
Is that the final plan?
Yes.
Then they're done if they do that right.
And yes, because then they've got complete control. They will then be able, through artificial intelligence, to dictate the human frequency and be able to feed off it. And without anything like the same amount of manipulation it's taken this far. See, so if you have a war, even fear of a war, anxiety, a war itself, it's an energetic explosion of low vibrational energy.
And that's what you see with the war on terror, with all these conflicts.
All of it. It's 2 world wars. I mean, look at the world and the number of wars and conflicts. And this is an interesting point too, Brian. There was a book written by an English academic called Steve Taylor called The Fall, some years ago now. And what he was doing was focusing on a period about 6,000 years ago when there was a very significant, and in terms of what we call evolution, a very fast change in the human psyche. And it came out of the Middle East after an invasion of what he calls Indo-European and Semitic peoples. Of course, when I say Semitic, people think, oh, you mean Jewish? No, no. Semitic refers to a language group in the Middle East, and the vast, vast majority of Semitic peoples are Arabs. Something else that's an inversion. People, well, no, just Jewish and it's Semitic. No, it's not. So it was Indo-European and Semitic peoples. And from these violent invasions around 6,000 years ago, this new psyche came out of the Middle East up into Europe and eventually through the empires of Europe all over the world. And it was a psyche that that saw everything very differently to what had gone before. According to Steve Taylor, before this change of psyche, there was no war as we know it. There was no male-dominated society as we know it. There was no hierarchy as we know it in terms of hierarchy of wealth. There was no bricks and mortar religion as we know it. And one cultural academic, Rian Esler in America, called it the Great Change, a change that basically has never been seen before. And as the European empires, with this new psyche, as Taylor calls it, started going around the world, they were imposing this new psyche on the native peoples. They would go into Africa, they'd go into Asia, South America, the Native Americans, they would go into Australia and the Aboriginal people, and they would take the place over. They would marginalize the old psyche, if you like, or the ancient knowledge. As a great friend of mine, Credo Mutwa, a Zulu shaman who's now in his 90s, said to me, he said, when the Europeans came into South Africa, they milked the minds of the shaman to find out what they knew and then killed them. They wanted an end to that stream of knowledge from the ancient world. So basically, they started with an historical ground zero where they could invent another history.
Reprogramming.
A new program. Now, what's also fascinating is this guy, William Tompkins, who wrote about his work since 1942, from 1942 in this naval intelligence interaction operation with non-human entities, who talks about reptilian races controlling world governments. He said that this reptilian force started to impose itself 6,000 years ago, which is kind of interesting because that's when this new psyche happened. Again, what is a new psyche? It's control of perception. It's a new perception. And so when you talk to native peoples, like I spent hours talking to some Aboriginal people in Western Australia when I was out there last year, they're talking about their oral history and their belief system. And they're speaking the language that I'm speaking from way off the postage stamp. And that way off the postage stamp perception is what has been deleted by the new psyche. The postage stamp is this new psyche, basically. And because what the brain is doing, it's a processor of information, just like a computer. And if you program a computer to process information a certain way, it will. Program it to process information in another way, it will. And as the brain is processing information in a certain way, that's your perception. But what you can do, because consciousness is all powerful, is if you can break the program and allow your mind to expand into what I would call consciousness beyond mind, beyond the five senses, then you can override the program.
And that's what you're trying to teach people how to do, or just show them that there's a reality and get them to snap out of it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the millions of people now that have had these near-death experiences, and when they've left the body, when the body's died. What is the body? The body, because we call about the physical body, the body's not actually physical. This is why shape-shifting is possible. If the body was solid and physical, shape-shifting would be impossible. You can't shape-shift a solid physical body to a solid physical body.
I haven't seen a shape-shift, so I don't know. Have you?
Well, I've seen eyes go, yeah. I've seen eyes go.
Have you met one of those reptilians?
I've seen eyes go.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen eyes change from round pupil to slit pupil.
Okay, I'm not one of them,
but,
am
I? No.
Okay, good.
But
do they know that they are? Do they know they're complicit always?
Some do, some don't.
Okay.
Most don't. Things like schizophrenia has many causes, but there is a schizophrenia in these people because which part of this dual field, this hybrid nature, is calling the shots at different points.
They sound very powerful, David. How will this play out? Do we have any chance against them, or do you not care because you've been open to a new reality and you are not gonna give up until you try to convince everyone of the reality you know?
No, I'm not trying to convince anybody.
Okay.
That's the big important point. The last thing we need is someone else standing up saying, I've got all the answers, listen to me and everything will be fine. What I'm saying to people is there's another way of looking at the world. There is a vast spectrum of information that's off the postage stamp that you never see. And that you are not who you think you are. The greatest of all suppressions is the suppression of knowledge of who we really are. Where I'm coming from is that what we are is a point of attention within infinite awareness. And that point of attention can be just a drop. And that point of attention will say, I'm Ethel, I work at the checkout, that's all I am. I've got no power. I just check out the stuff and go home. I've got no power, me. Everyone else has got the power. Point of attention with an infinite awareness. Or you can expand your understanding and your perception and realize that you can be as much of this infinite awareness as you choose to expand into. And when you do that, your whole perception, the point from which you look at the world completely changes. You've gone from here, I don't understand it, it's all bewildering to me, and suddenly you don't see pixels anymore, you see pictures. You don't see strands, you see patterns, you can see how it all fits together. And the only difference between those 2 points of perception are, I am little me, I am all that is, has been, and ever can be, having that experience. Because this is the basis of the whole hoax. It's to persuade that point of attention that it is what it's experiencing. It's to persuade it that the I is its name, its race, its religion, its life story, its income bracket, its culture. No, that is not who we are. That is what we are experiencing. But the whole hoax, and the postage stamp consensus, of course, is fundamental in this, is to pull that point of attention into five sense reality. So it perceives only basically five sense reality. At which point everything seems limited, everything seems I can't, it's not possible. And people self-identify, this is what I call phantom self-identify with what they're experiencing. Now, once you get there, you're in the land of it's not possible, but you're also in the land of infinite possibility to divide and rule the target population and play the target population off against each other, so that we're fighting each other over race and religion and income and all that stuff, while the same strings are being held by the same hands of everybody. Once you, and all it is, Brian, is a self-identification from I am my experiences, I am my name, and all those labels, I call it label consciousness, into I am infinite awareness having those experiences. And everything changes. What you see changes, what you perceive changes, the way that you live your life changes, what you can manifest changes for reasons I can get into. It's a simple interaction of energy based on frequency. But look what's happening. These labels now are being subdivided and subdivided into the minutiae of self-identity, to the point where we now have lists of letters like a game of Scrabble to describe self-identity. I am an LBGGG. This is not about whether you are sexually attracted to the same sex. It's not whether you feel, I don't feel right in this body. That's a separate thing. And of course there has to be no discrimination about that. But what's happening, especially with children and the young, preparing them for where this world is being taken, is they're being encouraged to question sexuality and gender when they weren't questioning it before. And what's happening is the minutiae of detail of self-identity is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you look at the hierarchy of political correctness, basically the smaller the minority, the smaller the minority, you go to the top of the hierarchy of political correctness, the minutiae of self-identity. And what this is doing is pulling self-identity, I am infinite awareness, all that's been, has been, and ever can be. I'm a point of attention within infinite possibility. It's pulling it further and further from that perception into subdivision and subdivision and subdivision of the minutiae of self-identity. It's being done purposely and at the moment very effectively.
So it increases fear and anxiety, and it's all part of that master plan.
Every time you create a new self-identity, you have another self-identity to play against other self-identities. Summed up a few weeks ago, I don't know if you saw this in the paper, when a transgender person and a feminist person had a punch-up in the street. I mean, this is classic. And just more and more fault lines to divide and rule us. But once you re-self-identify, yes, I am a point of attention with an infinite awareness, but so are you of the same infinite awareness. You who call yourself a different race, you who call yourself a different sex, you who call yourself a different gender, you too are points of awareness in the same infinite awareness. Therefore, we're all each other. And each point of attention is a unique point of attention. So once you come into this this wider, expanded self-identity, it's not like, oh, we're all infinite awareness, so we're all the same. No, that's what happens when you go into the minutiae of self-identity. That's why everything becomes, basically the same, this postage stamp consensus. Once you come into the state of expanded awareness, you absolutely celebrate diversity, true diversity. You celebrate your uniqueness, because you may be a point of attention within the same infinite awareness, but you're a unique point of attention. And then life starts to become an adventure, because I say this is the way it works. I mean, people just have to see what they think, but I've been studying this a long time. This is what I've concluded. Your perceptions are a frequency band, a frequency, whatever they are, low frequency, narrow frequency, expanded frequency, depending on the perception. We live in the equivalent of, I call it the cosmic internet. Now, I've been writing since about 2003 that I say we live in a vastly advanced form of virtual reality game. What I've found interesting in the last few years is more and more mainstream scientists have come out and said, well, actually, it just look like we are in some form of computer game, not least because the physics of computer games and the physics of our reality are mirrors of each other. So more and more people are kind of looking at this. It was very rare before, but now people are actually looking at the evidence and going, well, actually, it does look like this. But anyway, I say we live in a cosmic internet, which is basically mirrored by the internet that we know. How does that work? You have, say, Wi-Fi fields of information. And that Wi-Fi field represents the World Wide Web, which is a collective reality. You can access the same global reality in Australia and America and Britain and France and South Africa as everybody else, so long as you have access to this World Wide Web global reality. But when you look at the information in Wi-Fi fields, it doesn't, well, we can't even see them. I mean, if there's Wi-Fi in this studio, where is it? And if computers didn't exist and people didn't know about computers, and I said, do you know, in this room, in the unseen, there is a whole worldwide collective reality. And if you log into it, you can log into it anywhere in the world and you can go into this collective reality. And people go, you're mad. I can't see it. What do the five senses say? Postage stamp consensus. Can I see it, touch it, taste it, hear it, smell it? Oh, it exists then. I can't? Doesn't exist then. But because people know about computers, if I describe that, they'd go, oh yeah, Wi-Fi, I know about that, yeah, Wi-Fi. It's just a matter of knowledge. That's all it is. The more we know, the more we understand. And things that we go, oh, that's mad, become perfectly logical with knowledge, with understanding. This is why control of knowledge is so important. So what the computers does is it takes information in that Wi-Fi form and it puts it on the screen in the form that we call the internet, pictures and graphics and videos and all this stuff. But the only place the internet exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's information in other forms. Now, what I'm saying is in the book is that that is technologically mirroring the very reality that we're experiencing.
So we can tap into our cosmic internet if we can get on the right frequency.
Yeah. Well, we tap into the cosmic internet, whatever frequency we're on. That's the point. The frequency we're on dictates what part or information we are connecting with within this cosmic internet Wi-Fi. Because, again, let's come back to perception. When people go on the internet, they have a vast worldwide choice of websites, of subjects, of everything you can even imagine. What makes them choose to go to this website or that website is their perception. Their perception of what they like, what they believe, what they don't believe, dictates where they go. In the same way, but in a slightly different process, I'm saying that that's actually what we're doing all the time. Because this cosmic internet is like a quantum field of possibility and probability waiting to manifest. And we are interacting with it. But the scale at which we're interacting with it and the frequency at which we're interacting with it is dictated by our perception. So if we have a perception of Ethel on the checkout or Bill driving the bus, and that's not just an experience, that's who you are, then your perception of self means you're going to operate on a very narrow band of frequency as you interact with this cosmic internet. And basically, life's going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what it does, it's
confirmation bias.
I would go further and say it's actually a feedback loop.
Okay.
A feedback loop for this reason. And again, you can see why people think you're crazy if without the background information about reality itself. But how are we creating reality, which will lead me back to this feedback loop? This cosmic field of possibility and probability, in its base form, is waveform information. The body in its base form is waveform information. And what the five senses do, for instance, is take waveform information, turn it into electrical information, and communicate it to the brain that decodes it into, I would say, digital and holographic information, which gives the illusion of physicality. It also gives the illusion of the world being outside of us when it's actually inside of us. And when you break it down, the world that we see and appears to be outside of us is actually being decoded in a small area at the back of the brain into the reality we think is outside of us, just as a computer is decoding information inside itself, which appears on the screen. So
we're projecting our own reality back into ourselves.
Yeah, but
a lot of people would agree with that.
But what we're doing in terms of that reality is interacting with this possibility, probability, quantum field on the basis of our perception. So little me, little possibility, is represented in the frequency band that operates in. So you're now interacting with possibility and probability and setting up this feedback loop of waveform becoming holographic, which is mirroring your perception. This is the self-fulfilling prophecy feedback loop. When you then self-identify, I'm infinite awareness having an experience, that expansion of self-identity is an expansion of consciousness that perceives that self-identity. So now you're interacting with possibility and probability on a much higher frequency and a much wider range. This is why when people start to, quote, wake up, what is waking up? It's removing the onion skins of programming so we can be what we always were but have forgotten because of the programming. And what do people say? I went through it. When this happened to me, exploded with me in 1991, your life starts to become synchronistic, more and more synchronistic. More and more coincidences happen. Fancy seeing you here. I mean, this is amazing. How can you... And this is just a quick aside. This is how all this information has come to me over the last 30 years, in the most synchronistic way. Why? Because you're interacting with possibility and probability in a much bigger range and a higher range of frequency of possibility. And therefore, you're setting up another feedback loop where you have all this possibility and probability, far more than that, which you can manifest into a reality. So life becomes an adventure. You start to be able to manifest things and do things that someone else would say, well, you're just lucky or whatever. No, it's not. It's what you're manifesting. Now, if we had to change this world by sitting in the illusory physical and changing it in the physical, which doesn't exist, by sitting round a table and creating organizations and someone taking minutes, forget it. No chance. Just enjoy the rest of your life because it's over. But that's not the way we change the world. The world that we experience as collective reality is the sum total of human interaction between perception and possibility and probability. And that's why the world is as it is, and that's why they have to control our perceptions. They know all this deep in the shadows. not the politicians, just pawns. I mean, deep in the shadows. They know that if they can control our perceptions of reality, of world events, yes, but crucially of self, then they're going to control the feedback loop, and they're going to control the world we manifest. I've got no power. They have the power. They must look after us. Big Brother must save us. But if we, and so many more people are, but if more and more of us go through this process of perceptual transformation, we start to literally decode out of possibility and probability a new world. Because at the moment, we are existing in a world, in a reality, that is the holographic manifestation of human perception. If we change human perception from little me to infinite me, the world must change. Not only that, we will expand into levels of frequency that this manipulative force cannot operate in.
So we don't even have to go kill them. They just won't be able to handle our new perception.
Well, when anyone thinks that the way to change anything is to A, perceive an enemy, B, hate it, and C, kill it, that is the
that's what they're trying to do.
The lowest of the low of perceptions. You know, this is why they want war, they want conflict, they want hate, because it holds us in a low frequency, thus low perceptual, thus low feedback state, and the world goes on as they want it. And, you know, one of the great ironies, God, there are so many, is that there are groups who are trying to have my events, my public events, banned. They call me a modern day hate preacher. When what I am saying is, and they call me anti-Semitic and racist.
That's what they do. They latch onto that and they call you anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
But you're saying you're not.
Well, of course not. I mean, how can someone who says, hey, race, religion, it's all an illusion. It's just an experience. We're all each other. I don't care if you're Jewish or Islamic or Chinese or wherever you are. It's just an experience of the same consciousness. Somehow, that is twisted, lied about, so that they have an excuse for saying we must silence him because he's a hate preacher. I am saying that hate is the way we got into this mess. I'm saying in the events they're trying to stop, love is the answer, not the love of physical attraction, which has become the way love has been misunderstood, but a love that understands we're all each other. And that fighting each other and hating each other is just confirmation of a complete misunderstanding of reality and the nature of self and who we are. But if you can't have someone silenced by telling people what they're saying, then say what they're not saying and justify it that way. And have you noticed this? I notice it all the time. Those groups that scream hate at people do it with hate in their face, hate in their eyes. You see, another great irony is that these groups, I'm not talking people in general, I'm talking these particular groups, what I call hate groups, and they are hate groups because their modus operandi is to get people like me hated by the public, thus they're hate groups. But what what they're doing is pointing at me and saying racist. And I'm saying race is a hoax. Race is an illusion. Race is just an experience. And in the greater scheme of things, an absolute irrelevance. But those that are screaming that are obsessed with race. They completely self-identify with it. It totally consumes them. And once you see self-identify yourself with being a race, suddenly other races are there to be in conflict with you. It's all an illusion. And it's extraordinary that someone who has the philosophy that I have can be painted by these tiny hate groups in the way that I am. But this is what happens, you see. Again, we come back to the postage stamp consensus. We come back to giving your mind away. They go to venues and they say, this guy's going to say it's the Jews. He's going to deny the Holocaust. I never have. And when people have said to these groups, show where he's ever done that. Silence. And the other thing they won't do is debate with me. I've asked them. I've said, I'll take you all on in a debate, all you against little me, and we'll have a chat, and we'll have a debate. No, they won't go there. Why? Because throwing mud and running is the way it's done, always has been done by groups like this. But what happens is they go to the venues, and the venues, they start to virtue signal. Well, part of it is virtue signaling, and part of it is fear of also being called racist by having me use their venue. And they pull. Not all of them, no, but they pull. And do you know, not only don't the venues come to me and say, actually, they're saying you're saying this. Are you going to say that? And the answer would be, no, they don't. Not only that, they don't even tell you. We had this is the crazy world we're going into, Brian.
Is this political correctness?
Yeah, political correctness and fear. People are frozen in fear of saying the wrong thing. It's destroying human discourse, thus destroying the interaction and sharing of information. It's being done on purpose. We had a launch for the book at Old Trafford, Manchester United's ground. And the reason we went there, supposed to be a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, was because the Lowry Hotel in Manchester had pulled the event where it was first on the very basis of what I've just said. We read about the fact that it had been cancelled in the media. And that's the other thing, the media play an extraordinarily important part in this. I'm looking on the internet when the Lowry Hotel in Manchester pulled that book launch. I'm seeing a headline in various newspapers, on websites, including the Manchester Evening News, Coventry Telegraph, ITV television. Hate preacher David Icke's event cancelled by hotel. They had taken a press release from the hate groups, completely lying about me and my views, and repeated it. And I contacted them. And I said, before I call my lawyer, will you just send me all the evidence you have that the headline's true? Gone in minutes. 2-3 minutes, gone. Taking it down. Because they have no evidence. It's repeating. But you see, even journalists are terrified of saying what they should be saying as journalists, which is, hold on a minute. What do you mean you want to stop this man having a public platform? Well, whatever happened to freedom of speech? He doesn't agree with what you're saying, but he's not trying to stop you speaking. He would never try to get a venue to stop you speaking because he believes in freedom of speech and free discourse. Why are you trying to stop him? What's your agenda? No. They just take their press release and repeat it. And what happened with Manchester United, it was bizarre, is they eventually started trying to get Manchester United to pull. And I don't think they would have managed it. Because Manchester United said to us when we booked it, and they knew about the background, they said, "Oh no, we're too big. We don't bow to that pressure now. We're too big." Okay. And I don't think at that point it would have done. On the morning, it was a Friday, recently. On the morning after the previous day, my son Jamie and the team that's been working on it, we're communicating with Manchester United staff and all the preparations going ahead. On the morning, the local MP, a Labour MP called Kate Green, starts on social media because she's approached by these hate groups. And she says, yes, I'm not having this, basically. I'm going to call Manchester United. And she calls Manchester United, and they pull it. And another group involved was Kick It Out, which is an anti-racist group within football. But this is the point. Kate Green had no idea what I'm saying. She's never read a book. She's never heard me speak. She had nothing. The hate groups say, I'm going to say this, and I believe this, all of which is nonsense. And so she just takes it as read and repeats it to Manchester United. She contacts Kick It Out, an anti-racist group. Never read a book of mine. Don't know anything about me. But racism. And this is the other thing, anti-racist groups need to be very, very careful that they don't see racism everywhere where it's not, because it suits their reason for being. So Manchester United then cancel. We find out on social media. My son, who's been talking to them for months, goes out to Old Trafford to say what's going on. Not only will they not speak to him, they got the security to escort him off the premises. This is what you're dealing with. People have no idea what you're dealing with, just to literally have a platform to talk about the need to love each other. The nature of reality. It's absolute madness. But this is the crazy world we're in.
Is this the grand plan of the Illuminati, or is this just now the sheep acting like the sheep?
No, it's both.
Do you want to hear something crazy, David? I believe and agree with 90% of what you're saying. And over the past 6 years, I've had 400 of what I believe some of the greatest minds in the world sit in that chair. And many of the most advanced ones, including Dorian Yates, 6-time Mr. Olympia, Dennis McKenna, was a brother of Terence McKenna in the psychedelic movement, all come down to this conclusion: we are all one.
Yeah.
And when we can get away from these senses and contact our higher power and go to the love each other, that's how we can advance as a entity that we are human. The only part I'm not yet connected with your reality is that I think that the enemy is in ourselves, and it's not necessarily external that's making us do this. But once you get past your headlines, which are, you're in the hate groups, or, for me, the shape-shifting reptilians, what's underneath, you are very London real, David. You are very much congruent in the things that I believe. And it is about love, I believe, and about empowerment is what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's about remembering what we've been manipulated to forget. And this is the point that I would make in that area, Brian, that you say you're not going with yet. There is a reason why humanity has forgotten its true self. You described in what you've just said how to empower ourselves, right? This force does not want humanity to empower itself. It wants humanity in a state of bewildered, confused, chaotic subservience. This is why the true nature of reality is so systematically suppressed, because once we remember, it's over. It's over. Therefore, the force which wants to enslave us for its own purposes has to keep us in ignorance of true self, because without that, it's got no power over us. It's a classic example of, in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. This force is the one-eyed man. To control humanity, it has to keep us in a state of blindness. When we become the two-eyed, third-eyed consciousness that we are, it's over. That's why the control and the nature of our true self are connected, because one must stop us remembering that. This is what religion's about. Religion says your little me and big me is out there, and by the way, me with me collar and me hat and me frock, I know what big me wants, therefore listen to me, do what I say, and then you'll be fine. And if you look at religions, it's a program. It's a software program, I would describe it as. You say to a Muslim person, you're a Muslim, what does that mean? Oh, well, I go to the mosque and a man tells me what God wants me to do. Okay. And what will happen if I don't do what he says? And you? Well, I'm a Christian. What does that mean? Well, I go to the church and a man tells me what God wants and what will happen if I don't. You? Oh, I'm Jewish. What does that mean? Well, I go to the synagogue and this man tells me what God wants and what will happen if I don't. It's a program. It's pseudo-randomness. I see this all across the world. Pseudo-randomness. I also call them opposames. These are things with different labels that if you break them down, they all operate the same way. And religions are like that. They are a program. They have the same modus operandi. And it is you, little me. You subordinate to big me. And you are a blasphemer if you could dare suggest that you are an expression of big me. This is how it works. If you break it all down, it's all about holding us in a narrow, limited, little me state of self-perception. And it's being done systematically.
You mentioned the third eye earlier, and I want to ask you about psychedelics. Something we talked about 6 years ago, psychedelics like DMT and ayahuasca. And I've found, because I experienced them and I talked about that publicly, is that it's a way of connecting me into something, removing language, trying to remove a lot of my cultural programming. And it feels like I'm plugged into an information source that is either not tainted or less tainted by my download. Do you have any opinions or experiences with psychedelics, and do you disagree or agree with me?
Well, I've done psychedelics once. Again, very synchronistically. I'd reached the point, I'd written a book called Alice in Wonderland, the World Trade Center Disaster, which came out in 2002. I say demolishing the official story of 9/11. And as I was completing that, I said to people I knew, you know, if I'm going to go further into this and understand more, I've got to get out there and I've got to see this world from another level, not in some dream, you know, was that real or wasn't it, but where I can consciously experience it. Very short time afterwards, I got invited to go to the rainforest of Brazil near Manaus and speak and be with a group that was going to take ayahuasca, this rainforest plant. And I went, and I could have taken it 4 times, took it twice, and I've never done it before or since again. I've never felt the need, but the experience I had was absolutely transformative. And it basically was the key to opening up the reality that I've gone into in so many ways. Because I took it on the first night, and I had a 2-hour experience that was extraordinary. So a lot of paranormal things going on, like lights, strip lights coming on, with no one touching the light, you know. And I did that on my own with one other person who just oversaw it. But the second night, got a bigger dose, and tasted like licorice. And let me say, you know, some people have bad experiences on this stuff. I had an incredible experience. On the second night, this voice, as loud as mine is now, took a female form, started to describe to me the illusory nature of reality. And it went on for 5 hours. And the worst thing about it was my belly hurt from laughing, because this voice was describing the world as we perceive it and then explaining what it really was. And it was so funny. But the thing is that when the voice started and came out of nowhere, it said, we're going to take you to where you come from and to where you will return, so you better understand where you are. What? And then it said, and just repeated it about 3 or 4 times, all you really